Welcome to A Shot of Facts. This is your girl Deja Renee, and this episode is a shot of Black technology with Dr. Robert Wallace. Now, Dr. Robert Wallace is an internationally known entrepreneur with three multi-million dollar companies. He is an author, a business consultant, and a keynote speaker from Baltimore, Maryland. Now he has over also 41 years of engineering, energy, IT, and coaching industry experience. And he also leverages his expertise to educate and inspire entrepreneurs, executives, and audiences around the world. So, Robert, how are you doing today?
I'm doing super fantastic. I'm actually up doing what I love to do, which is skiing up in New England, and so I'm having a great time.
That's great. I actually never went skiing before, but I feel like it's kind of a skill that you have to learn.
Oh, you do.
Yeah.
I learned from my wife. She taught me how to ski years ago, so she's a really good downhill skier. I love cross country skiing because it's a good workout, and you get out in the woods and it's quiet and it's clean and the air is fresh, and I find it is a nice way for me to kind of regenerate myself a bit. So we really enjoy it.
I definitely understand where you come from. Now, since you are a Black STEM advocate, you work in STEM from over 41 years of experience.
That's correct.
My first question is, what is your intake on Black people getting into STEM fields? Do you think we need to have more representation? Do you think the representation is good where it's at? What are your overall opinions?
That's a great question. As you said, I am a very avid and strong supporter of the STEM, and some would say STEAM initiative, and for many reasons. One, if you look at like the creation of wealth in America, at least over the last 40 years or so, the wealth creation engine of our country has come from the engineering and scientific part of our economy. If you look at the companies that are expanding in their wealth creation, they tend to be tech companies. You look at Facebook, you look at Twitter,
Right.
You look at Tesla, you look at Amazon. I mean, even Amazon's not really, people don't view it always as a tech company, but the foundation and the platform of Amazon is technology.
People
And
don't even know
so
what
we
all
look at,
Amazon is involved in as well too when it comes to technology. So that's
yes, absolutely. I mean, you can go down the list. I mean, and I've said in one of my recent books, I said that professionals, even if they're not in a tech company, they really are technologists, right?
Right.
Because whether you're an attorney or you're a medical doctor or you're a teacher or you're a sociologist, whatever it is, the platform and foundation in which you run your business, pursue your career is a technology platform. And so I really push this idea. And I think that African American people and people of color would be in a better position if we were to be greater participants in the STEM fields. And so I'm a really big proponent of getting our young people trained, getting them, positioned to benefit from these opportunities in tech. We have, my wife and I, we have 5 kids, 4 boys and 1 girl. And we have 3.5 engineers, right, of the 5. And I say the half is my daughter. Yeah, right, because she majored in history, but she minored in computer science.
Oh.
So I give her a half engineering, designation. But we pushed our kids and we directed them into STEM fields. And the idea being, well, we want you to get a foundation in technology, and then you can grow from there. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, teacher, whatever, but you have a platform, a foundation in STEM. So yes, I do support that.
Now, for someone who has not, I want to say, a lot of times for Black kids growing up in urban neighborhoods, I'm from Detroit myself. I never was introduced to technology or STEM until really I got into college and majored in it and struggled because I didn't have a foundation in it. Right. So what can be a method for kids who want to get into the technology field, they want to get into STEM, but they don't have the resources? What can they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one of the challenges that we face as a people in terms of getting more of our young people, into this sector. And I think that it's important for people like myself and you and others who are either in the field or who have been exposed to it, that we have to reach back and we have to expose our young people to the STEM sector. I think that when children and young people are exposed to what engineers and scientists and chemists and physicists do, that I find that the majority of them get excited. They just don't have any linkage to help them to understand that area. So it's up to people like me and you and others to help to make that happen. So what do I do? So what I do is I write about it in my companies. I mentor young African-American students to expose them to engineering and science. In my businesses, hiring, young scientists and exposing them, supporting schools that are focused on building a STEM pipeline of kids from the inner cities and from the rural areas as well. Right. And so I think that we can do something to just expose our kids. So here's my premise. My premise is once you expose them and they see what it is, the majority of them will get excited about it and want to be a part of it. So I think that's what we can do.
Yeah, I feel like exposure and experience, first of all, to get a good position in STEM, you need that experience anyway. Like before you graduate college, you need internship experience and things of that sort. So giving our kids that leverage from a young age will put us in a higher place and position when it comes to them.
Amen. It sure will. It sure will. And it will help change the wealth equation too. Because as I say in my books, that the wealth equation is driven by entrepreneurship. And I'm suggesting that there's a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities that are based upon technology that our young people who are just as smart as anybody else can get in and be a wealth creation player in the economies of the present and the economies of the future. So I think it's imperative that our community really expands the pipeline of young people of color going into engineering and the sciences.
Definitely. Now, let me ask you this question, because I know you are experienced in natural resources, environmental science with your solar energy service.
That's
right?
Correct.
So my question to you is, how do you feel about environmental injustice when it comes to Black neighborhoods? Because I have my master's and undergrad in environmental science, and one of the reasons why I majored in that field is because growing up in Southwest Detroit, I lived by salt mines, I lived by oil refineries.
Yes, ma'am.
So many people, even in my family, my friends, all have some form of cancer, some form of asthma. And I realized that this is not normal, and this is environmental racism that's going on. So what is your opinion about overall environmental injustice and systematic racism overall as well?
So let me start with, first of all, that what you just said, environmental racism, environmental inequality is real. It is not made up. It's not a maybe. Right. It's not a might be. It is real. You shared your experience. I can share mine. Being raised in South Baltimore in the projects, it was interesting that the city of Baltimore decided years ago when they were going to put out to build a trash incineration facility and a land dump where they would dump trash. It was adjacent to my community. I remember when I was a kid, we were, I was very much into sports. We played baseball and basketball. But I remember playing baseball and being out, and I played center field. And I remember being out in center field, which happened to be right next to the open dump and the incinerator. So on days where they burnt the trash and we were playing sports, our eyes would literally burn from the smoke from the incinerator, right? When they were putting in the landfill, the trash in the landfill, I remember playing center field and looking down at the ground, and it seemed like the ground was moving, but what was really happening was it was rats, right? Because they had built the ball field over the landfill, and so the rats were being active. I mean, this was the environment that I was raised in, and like you said, and there are tens of thousands of us who were raised in those environments. And like you said, who can tell, who knows the health consequences
Yeah.
of us being raised in that smoke and being near the landfill for decades. So you're absolutely correct. And one of the things that I really push in our energy business, we're about to create a $250 million fund that will invest in solar energy projects that will benefit low and middle income communities across America. And part of the reason we're doing that is because of the environmental injustice that we've lived through. And we want to use renewable energy as a tool to help to remediate some of that and to make it a better living environment for people, for all people.
And that's why I feel like we need more Black representation in STEM, because people like you are advocating for our communities to help us have just better qualities of life or
Yes,
qualities
ma'am.
of living. That's one
That's
of the
right.
main issues. And I realized from a young age that this was not normal. Like, we used to have a huge problem with acid rain,
Right,
and
right.
like our eyes would be
Right.
burning. If it
Yep.
rained outside, we were outside, our eyes were burnt and
Yes, ma'am.
red. And it
Yes,
was
ma'am.
always like a boil water advisory. And it's just like, it's not normal. And
No, it isn't. That's a great point. Another, anecdotal story in my neighborhood in South Baltimore. Most of the men in my neighborhood, the fathers, right? Most of them died from cancer, and they had all kinds of cancers: throat cancer, skin cancer, pancreatic cancer. I mean, it was interesting. Most of the men in my neighborhood who died, they died from these cancers, and they worked down at the Bethlehem Steel and the steel plant, and just being exposed to all of these chemicals. Now, I gotta believe that environment has something to do with
yeah,
the high incidence of cancer deaths, particularly of Black men in my own neighborhood. So I think you're on to something. And if we don't have representation in those areas, it's not that people are intentionally bad or dastardly. It's just that they're not sensitive to the issue that you and I might be sensitive to. So
right.
we need to be at the table, right? There's an old saying I use in mentoring young entrepreneurs, and I say, if you don't have a seat at the table, that means you're on the menu. Right? So no seat at the table means you're on the menu. You do not want to be on the menu. You want to have a seat at the table. So I think that's very important to consider.
Now, speaking about entrepreneurship, because we could talk about this off the show, because I have so much to say about environmental injustice. Like, I went to Tuskegee and did a whole bunch of research on it.
Love it.
We could go off the show and discuss. But I want to start gearing towards entrepreneurship now.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
what you mentioned, having a seat at the table or creating your own table, how can people start that process who came from literally nothing? I feel like that's one of the main issues with entrepreneurship. A lot of people, it's hard work. It's
It
hard
is.
work.
It
Don't
is.
get me wrong. But a lot of people think that it's not possible because of where they're at or where they're starting at. So, what are your opinions about that?
Absolutely. Well, I think the starting point is that all of us have to rekindle the ability to dream, the ability to dream. And we need to become dream catchers, right? We did some work for the Lakota Native American reservation many years ago, and I became very close friends with the local chief there. And he talked about this. They have this spiritual philosophy called dream catching, right? And so it's the idea that my current environment may not be what I want it to be, and it may not be optimal, it may not be the best, but if I can just dream of what could be, right? And then that dream can take on reality. It takes on a whole level of energy, by itself. I mean, I look at my situation, man. My mother was a janitor in the school system in Baltimore City. My dad was a laborer. We didn't have any entrepreneurs in my family, but what mom and daddy did were they were very intentional about exposing us to entrepreneurs. So in my neighborhood, we had a shopping center. It's called Cherry Hill Shopping Center, and at the time, it was the entrepreneurs were all white. The food store, the cleaners, the clothing store, the owners were white. But mom and daddy would take me into the store, and they would say, "Look at the people behind the counter, right? And look at how they live. Look at how the cars they drive and all that." He said, "Now Now, one day, you want to be the guy behind the counter, right? Selling stuff. And so they planted the seed. And so what we need to do, man, we need to plant the seed and then really encourage our people, our young people especially, to dream. To dream, you got to be exposed to people who catch dreams. And they are the entrepreneurs of any color, of any background. Because I will tell you, my mentors I've had over the years, in terms of being an entrepreneur, have come in all shapes and colors and sizes. So don't be restricted to think that only African American entrepreneurs can help you dream. That's not true. You can start there, but there are men and women of all colors and backgrounds who are interested in helping people, who have great goodwill to help change our nation. And we need to seek out those people and to listen to them, right? Take the advice.
Now, how did you get started with your entrepreneurship ventures? Because I know you have a mechanical engineering degree from University of Pennsylvania, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And so how did you go from mechanical engineering to having 8 books and owning all of these companies and just being a boss? How did you start?
Well, I tell you, I have been blessed with great mentors. And there's a special high school in Baltimore City. It's called Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, BPI. It is a school that was designed for kids. It started with boys, all boys, but now it's co-ed. It's mostly sisters, co-ed, quite frankly, which is very nice. But it's a school that focuses on training kids who are gifted in math and science. And so as a kid, I was always gifted in math and science. I always, probably like you, ma'am, I was always a good student, right? I always got A's. I just, God blessed me that way. And mom and daddy made sure we took school seriously, and I always got A's. And so I was directed to this special school that targeted kids who were gifted in math and science. And so it was at that school that I was mentored by 2 men. And I mentioned to you earlier about your mentors could come in different sizes, shapes, and colors. These 2 men, I'll never forget it, Mr. Knighting, who was Polish American, and Mr. Sanford, who was Jewish American. And they took me aside one day and they said, Wallace, we think that you are capable and able, number one, to go to an Ivy League school to study engineering, and then at some point down the road, maybe start your own business. So these 2 men planted the seed in my young mind. At that, I was like 15 years old. They planted the seed, and then they nurtured the seed in my remaining years in high school that led me to University of Pennsylvania to study engineering. The truth be told, before I got to Poly, I had no idea what engineering was. But these men, in this case, it was men, they took me under their wings, and they saw something in me, whatever it was, I don't know, but I'm glad they did. And they helped me. They helped me to see a future that I had never seen before. And I'm grateful to these men. They both passed away now. This is years ago. But there's so many people like that in my life I could share with you, ma'am, that mentored me and gave me the path to follow. And I followed the path.
I definitely feel like mentorship can take you very far. Mentorship and networking.
Yes, ma'am. Amen.
A lot of people like to just, having an education is important.
It is.
But also, it's who you know too, and who can help you will take you very far.
I had to learn the hard way that lesson because I've always, probably like you and many of your listeners, I was a good student. I was an A student.
Right.
Played 3 sports. I was always successful at what I did. And so when I started the business, I thought, gee, I'm a smart guy. I work hard. I try to be a good man. I had all these things. I thought that was what I needed to be successful. And I learned very quickly, those things are not enough.
Right.
See, there's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, go together. And I had to learn the lesson that I could go further if I found a way to work with and partner with people along the way. If I learned through humility that, I may be a smart guy, but I'm not the smartest guy. Okay. Right. That there's so much I don't know. And that if I humble myself and reach out to men and women who are talented, successful, and who have great high levels of goodwill, that I could go much further than I can by myself. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way, but I learned it though. But I recognize it now.
I think we all at some point had to learn that the hard way, that we can't just do it by ourselves.
That's, that's right. That's right.
But
It's
one,
better to learn it while you're young versus when you're old.
but one question, since you did mention overall networking, knowing people, let's talk about group economics, because I know that's something that you touch on in many of your books.
I do.
How can we better group economics in the Black community when it comes to getting in positions in power, regardless of STEM, just overall positions in power and bettering our community? How can we work on that group economics aspect?
Well, I think the first step to building group economics is to first understand that it's necessary. As I said, you can go much further together than you can by yourself. And so you start with those who are closest to you and who have a shared purpose and a shared mission as yourself. I tell people all the time, be careful who you share your dream with, right? Because some people can't handle big dreams. And I learned at a young age that there were some people I couldn't share my really big dreams with certain people because they were dream killers. They would kill the dream. And I learned who those people were, and I learned who I could share my dream with. So the first step is being intentional about recognizing that there are resources in the community that if you master the art of asking for help, that these resources are ready and willing to help you. I think some people are so turned off by asking for help, and they feel that it's a signal that they failed, that they're not good enough, whatever. I think that's a mistake. So as you humble yourself and you recognize, yeah, I'm a smart person, I'm a smart woman, I work hard, but it's a lot that I don't know. Let me reach out. Let me humble myself, right? A level of humility, and say I need help. And I tell you, I've learned that when you humble yourself and you seek out help from people that are capable of helping you, right? Not from folks who just talk a lot but can't do anything, right? But men and women who are capable of helping you. You will find, I have found 9 times out of 10, when you ask for help, they will say yes. They will say yes. And I'm a real example of that in my own life. That 90% of the time when I've reached out, and I'm talking about men and women who are successful, who are accomplished, who in some cases famous. I won't mention any names because it's not important. But men and women who are capable of helping you, and who have a high level of goodwill, 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. Right. I will help you, But I think we tend to shy away from that. I think that's a mistake. But group economics is critical. But here's what I would challenge the listeners to. Your group economics should not be restricted to just people of color. Because I would submit to you that there are people who are not people of color in our world, right? Who are ready, willing, capable, and have a high level of goodwill, who will help you. And so I would just say, don't restrict yourself when you define group economics just to people of color.
That's true. I often struggle with that myself.
I know we all do. I know.
Blackness, yeah. I gotta check myself on that. What you just said.
No. I get it. And there are people who look like you who are capable, willing, and have a high level of goodwill, who are ready to help you. And that's a good place to start. So I definitely agree with that. I'm suggesting though that beyond that inner circle, that you then reach out to the outer circle, which may include people who don't look like you. And in this environment, 2021, I'm telling you, there are people of goodwill around the world. I'm working on a new book on global entrepreneurship. So what I did, my wife and I, a year or so ago, we got on this ship and we sailed around the world for 6 months, right? We visited over 35 countries, 100 ports of call, and we met people from all over the world, all cultures, all religions. And the purpose was to look at what is happening with global entrepreneurship, right? Not just US, but the globe. Yeah. And I tell you, I learned so much on that journey. I'm working on this new book, will be out soon. But the one thing I learned, the most important thing I learned was how little I know. Right, right. It
Right.
was a humbling experience because you think you think you think your assumptions are all correct and all that. Well, they're not. Yeah, your assumptions are wrong more times than not. You don't know as much as you thought you knew, and so it was really for me a humbling experience. And I think that is an experience that all of us need to not going around the world, but I'm just saying recognizing that there are people out there, smart people out there, and that we can collaborate with, man, we can do a lot of great things. So that's the point I wanted to make.
Right. Now, speaking about some of your books, one of your books, which is the Black Wealth Through Black Entrepreneurship, right?
Yes,
I seen you had like a model, your triad model.
that's correct.
So, can you explain a little bit more about that? It's like political power, economic power, and I guess the
And
ethnic
ethnic
root.
rooting.
Yeah. So, can
Yes,
you explain a
yes,
little bit more to the readers what is the model triad about when it comes to
absolutely.
entrepreneurship?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. So, in my first book I wrote, Black Wealth Through Black Entrepreneurship, I was, as I mentioned, I was a graduate student at the Amos Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. And that's where I began my research to study the success factors for people of color and women who wanted to be entrepreneurs. Now keep in mind, I started this research in the 80s, right? And so there was not much activity in the 80s for people of color and women who were in terms of creating wealth in America. There was some, but it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
And so I wanted to look at how that is done, what are the success factors and parameters, but more importantly, why was it important? Well, why was power? Power is simply, as I say in the book, power is simply the ability to achieve your purpose in the face of adversity. So power is, as I define it. And so I felt that in America, in a system based upon capitalism, the way we get power is by building what I call in the book the Power Triad. The Power Triad is not unique to African Americans or any other group. Every group shares this triad dynamic. And what is it? It says that for any group in America or any society that's based upon capitalism, to prosper and be competitive, they have to first build what I call in the book the Power Triad. And the Power Triad consists of three lattices, right? Consists of ethnic rooting. Ethnic rooting says that you understand the value and contribution that people who look like you have made to your country and to the world. See, if you look at the civil rights movement in America, it was all about ethnic rooting. It was all about Black folks being recognized, number one, as human beings,
Right.
and then sharing in the basic human rights that every American, shares in. I mean, it was basic. The right to vote, the right to be protected from terrorism, the right to participate in the economy, the right to own property. These were basic American rights that were denied people of color, African Americans in particular. So ethnic rooting is that first part. That's why Dr. King and the movement focus on that ethnic rooting lattice. Right. The second lattice that's important is political power. That's why the 1965 Voting Rights Act was so critical, because it once and for all made it the law of the land that African Americans and people of color had the right to vote, and that right to vote would be protected, right? So that gave us political power. Now, why is that important? Political power is important because your vote will determine how tax revenues are collected, how you be taxed, and then how that money that's collected, how it will be spent. That's why political power is so important. This recent election with President Biden and Vice President Harris is a perfect example of that. Because now if you look at President Biden's agenda, his agenda is much more sensitive to the needs of people of color and women than the prior administration. That's what political power gives you. Economic power is the third lattice of the Power Triad. Economic power says that I must be in a position where I can have leverage over how the economy is built and how it benefits my community. And I have always said in my books and my research that the way we build economic power is through entrepreneurship. That's my hypothesis. Now, some will agree, some will disagree, but this is Bob Wallace talking. And so I think we built the economic power through entrepreneurship. And if you look at every other ethnic group, particularly European ethnic groups that immigrated to America, they followed the same pattern, and they built their economic power primarily through entrepreneurship. Now we were denied that as a people, as people of African descent. We were denied that. And so we had to fight just to get the basic rights in the 60s and so forth. But now we're at a point now in the world, 2021, where I feel to complete the Power Triad, that we must complete the economic power ladders. So you got ethnic rooting, you got political power, then you have economic power. And when we build the economic power piece, we will have completed this Power Triad that we need to be respected and to be a player in a society based upon capitalism. And so in the book, I make that point, and I try to give people some motivation and reason why this issue of entrepreneurship is a civil rights issue, in my opinion. It is an economic power issue. And so I really focus on that in my writings, in my research.
Now, some people believe, specifically to America, I can't speak for other countries, that African Americans in particularly will never reach that level of economic power in this capitalistic society that they have in the US. So sometimes I agree with people when they say that, but other times I feel like a lot of people are just very pessimistic when it comes to economic growth. They just think the worst is going to happen and there's no way that we can progress. So
Right.
do you think that we will ever get to a point where we have economic power in the US specifically?
Well, you know what, that is, I feel you, and I know that many of us feel you on that. And I will tell you, I have had my moments. I'm a little older than you are. I've had my moments, but the one thing that I've always retained is hope. Is hope. You know, there was in the civil rights movement. You probably have seen the tapes and the movies, and we had a saying that said, "We shall overcome." Well, why was that important? It was important because if you don't believe that you can overcome, then you just lay down and die, call it quits, right? If you don't believe that your tomorrow will be better than your today, then what reason is there to live? You just die. And so I've always felt there's no question that America has not been fair to us as a people over the 400 years. America has not lived up to its promise of equality and equity in our society. America has not paid off that check that they owe us as a people. Have we made progress? You bet we have. I can tell you, I've lived through the 60s and 70s and the 80s and 90s and now into a new millennium. We have made a great deal of progress, and we have to always retain hope. It will always be a battle. So racism will never go away. Newsflash.
Right.
Racism will never go away. Hate will never go away. Sexism will never go away. Ageism will never go away. So we must recognize that and gird ourselves up to be able to fight it, to fight the racism, to fight the sexism, to fight the classism that exists in our society today. And when we believe that our future will be better than our present, then it will change how we think. It will change the decisions that we make. It will change the hope, the level of hope that we persist with. And so, I'll tell you quite frankly, I never thought that we would ever see in my lifetime an African-American person be president of the United States. Well, Barack Obama had a different view on that, right? He had a different view. So it happened. And so as a man or woman thinketh in their heart, so are they. That's what the Bible says. As a woman or man thinketh in their heart, so are they. So in other words, you become what you think you are. You become what you think you can be. And so I'm saying, sister, that we need to protect how we think. We must retain hope. We must never give up the power of a dream, because those are the things that change the world and that change people. And so, yes, ma'am, it's a hard battle. It's a struggle, no question about it. It ain't fair. It ain't right. but it is what it is. But warriors learn how to gird themselves up and become smart and to be inquisitive and creative and to defeat and outthink the enemy. And we must always be in that mode as a people.
Now, let me ask you this question.
Yes, ma'am.
Because when it comes to entrepreneurship, I feel like it's a level of mental health awareness that we need to discuss too on this journey. So, what are your opinions about mental health and also the journey of entrepreneurship and group economics and overall being more sustainable in this society?
You bet. It's funny. I have 5 kids, and they have educated me on the benefit and the power of mental health. Right. When I was a kid, and we were poor and Black. I mean, we struggled with emotional and mental issues, but we didn't have the resources or even think about getting help for mental health. We're at a different place now, and I will tell you, most of the entrepreneurs that I know who are successful, they have a regular meeting with their mental health therapists, whatever you want to call it, psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever, yoga instructor, whatever. I mean, whatever it takes, because mental health is critical to long-term success. It's critical to being the best that you can be. And I have, being an old school kind of guy, I've come around. My kids have really, had me see the benefit of this. And so I have resources like that help me. I happen to be a Christian businessman, and so a lot of my mental health is my spiritual commitments and spiritual work, and that helps me, mentally. But whatever the resources are necessary, because you cannot be at your best if you don't have that kind of support, however that support looks to you. And I do think, man, that does impact your ability to be successful, but not only to be successful, but to enjoy the fruit of your labor, right? I can think of no greater disservice or no greater tragedy than to work all of your life building something and then achieve it in terms of financial benefit and then not be able to enjoy it. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Right. So I've always been focused on, okay, Bob, build it and create it, but also be able to enjoy it. And that means the mental health that you talked about. It means the physical health, being able to, take care of yourself and not be sick. I have some friends who spent their life building businesses, building wealth, but didn't take care of themselves. So they get to a point where they have money and they have wealth, but they have no health. Mm-hmm. So then they are unable to enjoy the wealth, right? What a terrible existence that would be. And so I really caution people to pay attention in those areas.
Definitely. On the road to entrepreneurship, I feel like a lot of us, especially I can speak for the millennial group,
yes,
millennial generation, a lot of us have coined the term, no sleep, work, grind 24/7. And I always like to foot stomp that, yes, you need to grind, but you also need to relax and regenerate. Because you can work yourself to the ground and you can't get nothing done if you're in the hospital because you're dehydrated or you just work yourself to death.
Amen. Well, there's something I call, in one of my books, I call it the surge mentality, right? And what I mean by that is there are times when you and I, as we're building something, right, we will have to surge. What that means is, you're working the 18-hour day, push. You're not getting much sleep. You're not being able to get to the gym like you normally could. And and I call that the surge moments. But here's the thing. Here's the watch out. The surge phase cannot be 100% of your effort. So in other words, you cannot always be 100% in surge mode, because you will burn out, you will go crazy, you will destroy your health, and you may make a few dollars, but you will not be able to enjoy those dollars. And so I think you are absolutely correct. It's called balance, right? It's the balance, right? And it takes wisdom to know the balance. It takes wisdom to know when to surge, when to pull back. It takes wisdom to know when to take a sabbatical like I did, a year or so ago, a 6-month sabbatical. I told my executives, you're running the business, you guys are in charge, I'm gone. All right. And me and my wife and I, we hopped on the ship and we were gone. Right. We needed that. I needed that. Right. In terms of the balance and recharging and being able to surge when I got back in the country to make progress in other areas. So you're right. That balance is critical to long-term success. Yes, ma'am.
It is. It is. Now let's talk about your business ventures now.
Mhm.
So you are the founder or CEO of Bith Group. Is it
Yes, ma'am.
Bith Group? Yes. Technology. So that is an IT service provider, right?
So it's IT services, biometrics, cybersecurity. So it's providing IT solutions to large scale clients like government and corporations. Yes, ma'am.
Now, and that, as I was doing my research, was
Uh-huh.
considered a Hubzone certified company in 2019, right?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Now, what exactly is a Hubzone certified company?
Absolutely. So in the government contracting area, there are different pockets of suppliers that the government has seen fit to focus on and to encourage. Some of them might be minority business, some of them might be women-owned business, some might be Native American, indigenous people businesses, and so forth. Well, there's another bucket that's called HubZone. And what that means is it's an acronym. It means historically underutilized businesses. So HubZone businesses, so they're not race-based, they're not gender-based, they're location-based. So what you find in our country is that there are certain geographical areas that have not been, for whatever reason, have not been allowed to participate economically in contracting opportunities. So what the government did in its wisdom, I think, was say, okay, let's identify these historically underutilized zones, like in the inner cities, like in the rural areas, and in places that they just have not been able to participate in the opportunities. And we the government, we're going to focus on providing opportunities to businesses in those areas. So our company is headquartered in a hub zone, a historically underutilized business zone. And so on a federal level, what they do is the federal agencies try to identify a percent of their contracting opportunities to target companies in those hub zones. So I hasten to add, the hub zones they're not race-based, they're not gender-based, they're location-based. And they could be in the inner cities, they could be in the rural areas, anywhere where they historically have not been able to participate in the economic opportunity. So we are a hub zone business for that reason. Yes, ma'am.
And this is located in Maryland.
Yeah. So the hub zones are all over the
So
country.
Bith Group specifically is.
Yes, ma'am. So Bith Group is headquartered in downtown Baltimore, in a part of the city that historically has not been involved in economic opportunities on the federal level. So thus we are physically in a hub zone area, and so thus we are businesses in those areas are paid attention to by the federal government as far as providing contracting opportunities for these businesses. So you'll find hub zones in the cities, in the rural areas. You'll find them on Native American reservations, places where they have not historically been able to participate in the economic growth and benefit of business. Yeah. So we are in the hub zone in Baltimore City. Yes, ma'am.
Now, is Bith Energy Incorporated, is that in Maryland too as well?
It is. So Bith Energy is also headquartered in downtown Baltimore. It's also in the hub zone area, and it focuses on developing large-scale solar projects. I think I may have mentioned we're in the process of putting together a $250 million fund that will fund solar projects in the LMI areas. What's LMI? It's low and moderate income neighborhoods.
Gotcha.
So the LMI market, again, it's not race-based, it's not gender-based. It is economic-based. So if you are in a low or moderate income neighborhood, then our fund will focus on developing solar and renewable energy projects in those neighborhoods, such that low income people and moderate income people can benefit from renewable energy technologies, and to the point you made earlier, ma'am, at the outset of the show, so that we can begin to reduce the environmental inequities where our communities are having to deal with carbon-based pollution. We now can provide them with clean energy solutions that will help them participate in the benefits of renewable energy economy.
Now, how did you get started with these companies? Like, I know we talked about entrepreneurship, we talked about your story, but how did you come about opening these industries,
Yes,
especially back in your, I guess, home state of Maryland?
that's correct. Yes, ma'am. So as you mentioned, my background is engineering. My degree is in mechanical engineering and applied mechanics. So I can tell you from the energy standpoint, my research when I was studying engineering at the University of Pennsylvania, my research was in renewable energy. So I was researching in the solar energy, wind energy, wave energy, all the new emerging renewable energies. And so that was a passion that I had as a teenager. And so that was an area that I knew that one day that I would launch a business. The Bith Technologies, as you said, is an IT services company. And I worked for many years at IBM before I started that company. So my businesses are always connected to, or have been connected to, what is my passion and what is my strength. So I could never, for example, ma'am, I could never, not never, but chances are me starting a business as a restaurant, right, probably would not fit Bob Wallace, because my strength, my passion, my gift is in science and technology. So consequently, most of my businesses tend to be in technology because I invest in what I know,
Right.
and what I'm good at. So I won't invest in things that I don't know, that I'm not good at. And so that's why I kind of got started in those areas. And then the second reason is, and this is important, is for you and I to sit back as entrepreneurs and to try as best we can to predict where the opportunities for the future are going to be. So I can tell you now, ma'am, as we're looking at our next generation businesses, we're looking at things like artificial intelligence, be able to be a player in, right, moving into the future. When we started our energy company in 2008, 2009, the reason we started it 2008, 2009, because when President Obama became our 44th president, he made it very clear that he was going to invest lots of money, excuse me, into renewable energy technologies. The first president to do so since Jimmy Carter. And so we saw that as an opportunity. We ramped up Bith Energy. We were able to benefit from a lot of the plans that President Obama had as it pertained to this emerging area of renewable energy systems and technologies. So those two things, I think, make a difference.
Now, you also have a, I guess, media consulting service as well, too.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So with our media consulting company, so we started that when I wrote my first book in 1992. I started the research when I was in graduate school at Dartmouth, but I didn't publish my first book until the 90s. And from there, I felt that was an area that we needed to really focus on in terms of helping women and people of color to accelerate their involvement in the economy. And so that became the focus of that. And so I've been building upon what can we do to help minorities and women to accelerate their participation in the economy as entrepreneurs. And so my company, EntreTeach Learning Systems and RobertWallace.com, they were combined to one company now. And what we do is we do research, we do education and training, and we do coaching of entrepreneurs, right? So my research leads to the books that I have written and have published. But the content from the research is what we use to create the training modules to help particularly women and people of color to accelerate their movement into entrepreneurship and their success as entrepreneurs.
That's great. I know we also mentioned, before about networking and overall getting assistance on entrepreneurship. So I definitely think your company and companies like yours help people to jumpstart on where they want to be at. So
Yes.
definitely a good thing to know about and have connections in.
I
For
think it's so very, yes, ma'am. I think it's so very important. I think if I had I wish I had had someone like me when I was starting out. For whatever reason, I didn't. And so I had to do the best I could, right? Um, but now we've got this critical mass of entrepreneurs of color and women. And I'll tell you, women are just, they are no longer accepting, being second class citizens. They're no longer going to accept being taken for granted. I mean, look at this recent election. I mean, the sisters are kicking butt.
right.
They are the drivers behind why the Democratic Party has been successful. And the sisters saying, okay, I'm gonna help you win, but when you win, you're not gonna forget me anymore like you have in the past. And I think you're seeing that. I think you're seeing that, and that's
Yeah,
a good thing. I think
it's
for me.
beautiful. I'm
Yeah,
glad.
it is. And way overdue, right?
Right, way overdue. Let me tell you. But as we are wrapping up the episode, because I could talk to you for hours and I don't want to prolong the interview long, 2+ hours. But my last question to you is I want to get started with my last call segment. And so this segment is where I let my guests give out parting words or a last like letter of, or word of recommendation or encouragement for our listeners to take on beyond the show. So what would be your last call for this episode to the listeners?
Sure. Well, there's a saying in the Bible that my grandfather taught us, and I pass it on to my kids. And it says, I think it's Psalm 37:25, and it says, "I once was young, but now I'm old. But I have never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread." So what does that mean? Well, it was a psalm by King David, but it talked about the fact that life is short, and if you live long enough, you're going to get older. Okay, you're going to age, right? But what's
Less
important
than age.
is how do you have impact in the life that you've been given, right? It's not just about making money, it's not just about success, because I tell you, those things are fleeting. The money will come and go, success will come and go, but what will last is what impact you have had on the people around you and humanity. And what I have learned is this: is that if you focus on you and I, on the gifts that God's given us, right? And if we perfect that gift, if we take our life, we spend our lifetime perfecting that gift and being humble and asking questions and building alliances and partnerships and collaborating and sharing the success and sharing the wealth, then you will be at a point, whatever your lifespan is, where you are having impact on humanity. And when you and I were about to take our last breath on this earth, and we all will take our last breath on this earth, newsflash to all your listeners, we will take a last breath on this earth. When you in your bed about to take your last breath on this earth, on this side of eternity, what do you want to remember? What do you want people to think about you, right? You want them to think, man, this guy, this lady made a difference in my life. And I have got to a point in my life where I say, if I can get to my last breath on this side of eternity, and people can say, Bob Wallace, that guy, he made a difference in my life. He made my life better because he was here on this earth. Boy, I can close my eyes and rest knowing that I fought a good fight. And so, man, I'm just saying to people, business is good, making money is good, success is great. Yeah, I get it. But at the end of the day, you want to have impact on people's lives, starting with your immediate family, right? Your spouse, children, grandchildren, so forth, your neighbors, your community, your city, but beyond that, thinking big, how can I have a greater impact on humanity? And I suggest to you that every person listening to this podcast, every person has the potential to have impact on humanity. And that should be a goal, I think, that all of us have.
Definitely. Well, first, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to discuss overall entrepreneurship, group economics, your businesses, mental health. We discussed so many things on this episode, so many gems. But my very, very last question to you is where can we, myself and the listeners, find you? You have website, social media? Where can we find you?
Yes, ma'am. So if you go to www.robertwallace, that's my name, Robert, and Wallace is WALLACE, www.robertwallace.com. That will give you all of my social media handles, numbers, emails. It's all there. And we love to collaborate with people like you and others who are doing great things around the world. Around the world, we have a network of people who are entrepreneurs from almost every country on the planet. And so that is the global opportunity that young people like you and millennials have, which is a global reach. And boy, I tell you, I'm excited. I wish I had another 100 years to go on this earth, but I probably won't. But I could pass it on to you and to others who will listen to me.
Well, I will make sure to add all of your information in the show notes so that myself and my listeners can keep in touch with you. But overall, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I'm proud of you.
Thank
and
you.
what you're doing. Keep on going. Don't give up.
Thank you. And with that being said, I will talk to you later.
You take care. All righty.